Story 1. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Hell, I wouldn't believe me if I hadn't lived through it. But I did. My name is Evan Mitchell. I was a mechanical systems tech on board the research sub Erebus. We were part of a deep-sea exploration initiative, sponsored by a private tech conglomerate and partnered with 2 universities. The mission was to study microbial life in the Mariana Trench. We were supposed to be down there for 72 hours. We didn't make it that long. What I'm going to tell you was never in the reports. We all signed NDAs, but it doesn't matter anymore. I haven't slept for weeks. I see things in the dark. I hear things through my vents. I know they followed us back, and I have to talk about it. The first descent started normally. We launched from the support vessel at 04:1200 hours under moonless skies and calm waters. I remember staring at the sea before we submerged. It looked black, like it already knew. There were 4 of us on the sub. Dr. Lena Chow, lead biologist. Ray Calder, veteran sub-pilot. Alexei Malinov, sonar and comms. Me, keeping the engine room and life support in check. The Erebus was a sleek coffin of carbon fiber and steel. No windows, just sonar, cameras, and nerves. By the time we reached 7,000 meters, the light from the surface was long gone. At 9,500 meters, the trench yawned below like a second mouth of Earth. And at 10,800 meters, we began to descend into the unexplored. That's when the knocking started. We thought it was thermal expansion, maybe loose gear, but the tapping was rhythmic, precise, like knuckles on a door. Lena froze. Did you hear that? Ray brushed it off. Pressure shift. But Alexei went pale. It's coming from below us. I checked the sonar. A large object had moved beneath us, maybe 70 meters long. It wasn't solid like a rock or slow like a whale. It moved with purpose. And then it stopped, right below us. We shut off propulsion and hovered, dead still. The cameras turned on, flickering in the dark. There was nothing, just particles floating like ash. Then, movement. Something enormous glided into view for less than a second. Pale, boneless, like a ribbon the size of a subway train. It had no eyes, just a mouth, a huge circular maw that didn't seem to close. Inside were rings, rows of what looked like teeth, and gills that flared like rotten curtains. Is that alive? Lena whispered. It vanished again. The pressure around the sub increased, not from depth, but from proximity. That's when we heard the screaming. It didn't come through the speakers. It came from inside. Somehow, inside the walls, inside our heads, a screech like metal tearing and a baby crying and a woman whispering all at once. Ray grabbed his ears and started bleeding from the nose. Lena vomited and collapsed. I stumbled to the comms panel. No signal. Alexei sat frozen, mouth open. Look, he said. The walls of the sub began to sweat. I swear to God, they were bleeding. Thin lines of red dripped from the ceiling, staining the floor. I checked the pressure gauges. Normal, internal integrity. Fine. But I knew it wasn't mechanical. Something else was happening. Something wrong. Lena came to, mumbling. It's under us. It's watching. We needed to surface. Ray tried to re-engage propulsion, but the controls were dead. And then the lights cut out. For 15 seconds, we were blind. When they flickered back on, the water outside was gone. Not drained, just gone, replaced by black. A black so dense it didn't reflect light, and in that void, something hovered. It looked like a man, tall, lanky, but not. Its limbs were too long. Its mouth hung open in a perfect circle, like the thing we'd seen before, only now humanoid. Its skin was translucent, veined, stretched tight like a drowned body, and it was staring at us, with no eyes. Lena screamed. Alexei started muttering in Russian. Ray hit the manual override. But we didn't move, because it touched the hull. A groaning, screeching moan echoed through the sub, and every wall began to bow inward like a breath was being sucked out of the ship. Something pressed against my skull, thoughts that weren't mine, words, images. I saw drowned cities, coral-covered bones, ships floating upside down in black water, and faces, millions of human faces frozen in horror, all staring up from the trench floor. And then, silence. We woke up on the surface. No idea how. The support vessel's crew said we'd been gone only 6 hours. Our logs showed no anomalies, no deep water footage. The memory drives were wiped. Ray was catatonic, never spoke again. He died by suicide a month later. Alexei was institutionalized, claims he still hears the man under the water. Lena vanished 2 weeks later during a solo dive in the Bahamas. They found her gear, but not her body. And me? I left, vanished, changed my name. But I haven't escaped. Some nights, my shower runs black. Sometimes, when I sleep, I hear knocking under the floorboards. But the worst? Last week, I checked my voicemail. There was a single message. Just tapping. Rhythmic. Precise. Like knuckles on a door. And when I turned on my phone's flashlight, there was condensation on the inside of the screen. A single word written in the fog. Below. I don't know what we found. But it wasn't just an animal. It wasn't just some deep-sea anomaly. It was older than life on land. Older than bones. Something forgotten. Something buried. And now it knows we know. If you ever get offered a job in Hadal research, don't go. Don't even read the contract. Burn it. Because what sleeps in the trench doesn't want to be found. But if you wake it, it doesn't go back to sleep. Story 2. People think mermaids are beautiful. They picture long hair, seashell bras, shimmering scales. But they've never heard what I heard. They've never seen what I saw. My name's Evan Mitchell. Yeah, same guy from the Erebus dive. The one that went wrong. The one no one wants to talk about. I swore I'd never go back under. But 6 months after the incident, I got a call from Lena Chow's sister. Lena didn't die in the Bahamas, she whispered. She went back. I asked her what she meant. She just sent me coordinates. Another trench. A deeper one. A forgotten crack in the Pacific, deeper than any chart had recorded. They were calling it Black Hollow. And God help me. I said yes. The new submersible wasn't military grade or university owned. It was private, quietly funded, sleeker than Erebus, a one-person dive unit nicknamed the Coffin. Because once you're sealed in, you're not coming out until you surface, or something rips you open. Descent began at 0400 hours. At 11,000 meters, everything was still, beyond life, beyond light, but I felt watched. At 13,000 meters, I began to hear something through the hydrophones. Singing. Faint, high-pitched, a melody that didn't make sense, like whined through cracked glass, but musical, haunting. I recorded it, played it back. The melody was changing even when I wasn't transmitting. It was alive, and it knew I was listening. At 14,500 meters, I caught movement on the sonar. Multiple shapes, small at first, then closer. The cameras flickered. When the feed stabilized, I nearly screamed, because there was a face looking directly into the lens. Pale, female, but wrong. The eyes were too wide, too black, the mouth too long. It was smiling with hundreds of tiny needle-like teeth. Its skin shimmered faintly as though oiled. Blue-black scales spread down its jaw and neck, vanishing into the pitch. And then it sang. No words, just tone, a haunting lullaby that seeped into the sub through the metal. I felt it in my teeth, in my bones. Another face appeared beside her, then another. Soon the viewports were filled with them. These things, half women, half fish, all nightmare. Their hair floated like seaweed in slow motion, black and green and riddled with barbs. And they just hovered, watching. I tried to ascend. Nothing happened. Thrusters were unresponsive. I flicked to manual power, dead. The singing grew louder. The tone shifted subtly. What had once sounded mournful now sounded hungry. And then they opened their mouths wider. I don't know how they did it. Their jaws dislocated, extending outward like snakes. The lullaby became a shriek, a wail from hundreds of throats, vibrating through the hull like it wanted to tear the ship apart. One of them lunged, not with claws, not with teeth, but with a song. It screamed a single piercing note that made the lights explode in the cockpit. The sub pitched. My ears ruptured. Blood poured from my nose. And in the pitch black, I heard them whispering. Join us. She's waiting. Lena sings with us now. My heart stopped. Not metaphorically. I blacked out. When I woke, I was floating, not dead, not hallucinating. The sub was powered, systems functional, depth 3,000 meters and rising. I checked the recordings. Gone, all corrupted. But they left something. A mark on the glass. 3 long scratches, like talons, and below them, a symbol. I don't know what it means. Looks like a spiral made of teeth. I surfaced hours later. The recovery crew didn't ask questions. They just looked at me like they knew. Since then, I've kept quiet, but the melody hasn't left my head. I hear it in the shower, in my dreams, in the hum of the fridge at night. And I'm not the only one. 2 other divers from the same project are missing. One walked into the ocean last week in California, disappeared. Another was found on his boat with his ears torn out. And last night, I heard singing outside my window. I live on the 14th floor. I looked down. There she was, floating in the air like she was still underwater, hair drifting, eyes black. And her mouth was open, singing. I must have been hallucinating. If you ever go deep enough, deeper than the bones of the world, be careful. The ocean doesn't just hold monsters. It holds choirs. And once you hear their song, you never stop sinking. Story 3. I used to think nothing could survive at the bottom of the world. No light, no warmth, no God. But I've been there. I've seen what waits beneath the dead weight of the sea. And it doesn't just survive, it feeds. In 2022, I was contracted for a specialized marine biology survey. A private ecological firm wanted to study whale fall sites, places where the bodies of dead whales had sunk to the ocean floor and become ecosystems for scavengers. I'd done similar work before, but this was different. They were interested in aberrant growths, strange patterns in the bones, organisms that didn't appear in any known taxonomy. The data was classified, the pay obscene. The site was in the Philippine Trench, over 10,000 meters deep, not officially charted. There were 4 of us in the submarine. Myself, Evan Mitchell, and Lyra Rowe, deep-sea biologist. Captain Vince Crawley, a blunt ex-Navy diver. Dr. Kaito Ishida, xenobiologist. Kim Weller, our sonar and comms lead. We took down a custom deep diving vessel named the Gullwing, fully autonomous with emergency life support. We descended just before midnight. At 9,300 meters, the cameras picked up something bizarre. A whale corpse, huge, intact, unscavenged, lying upright on the trench floor. Its mouth was wide open, as if screaming. Weller muttered, "Shouldn't be here. No decay, no skeletonizing. This thing looks like it just died." But it hadn't just died, because it had no eyes, no skin left on the face, and carved deep into its ribcage, symmetric, precise incisions, spirals, symbols, like something had ritualistically prepared it. Dr. Ishida was breathless. "I've never seen this pattern in any species." As we maneuvered closer, sonar lit up with movement, a ripple of life, not around the whale, inside it. Suddenly, the comm system picked up a signal, singing. At first we thought it was whale song, but it wasn't. It was human, a lullaby, so soft, so distant, in a language none of us recognized, but it gripped the base of the brain like a memory we'd forgotten we had. And then the camera panned into the open mouth of the whale. Something moved. A hand. Small, webbed, too long, blue-gray skin stretched over bone. Then a face. Not a fish, not a woman. Something between the two. Wide, dark eyes, black slit pupils, gills flared open on her neck, hair like underwater moss, sharp teeth behind soft lips. She was singing. I froze. Weller screamed. The feed glitched, fuzzed out, and when it returned, the camera was inside the whale's body. And she wasn't alone. There were dozens of them, slithering between bones and muscle, like children in a womb. Some were larger, gaunt, eel-like figures with exposed rib cages and long arms that scraped the insides of the carcass. Their mouths never stopped moving, singing in low harmony. The sound wasn't coming from the speakers anymore. It was in the walls, in the air. The lullaby turned, sweet to grieving, then hungry, and the whale moved. Just slightly, but it twitched. Kill the lights, Crawley said. Turn everything off, now. Weller hesitated. They see us? They feel us. Too late. The sonar spiked. Something big and massive was rising up from below the trench, bigger than any living creature ever recorded. The whale corpse split down the center like a cracked egg, and something stepped out. It had a face, not human, not fish, something ancient, pale, featureless, except for a slit of a mouth and eyes that took in too much. It was tall, finned, covered in filaments that writhed in the current. Its chest opened with ribs that spread like wings, exposing others inside. Tiny mermaids curled like infants and singing in harmony. We lost pressure, integrity at that moment. The hull moaned like it was in pain. Frost formed on the walls. Lights died. And in the dark, the lullaby changed. It sang to us, directly into our minds. I saw myself floating, drowning, being fed to the trench. I saw my own body curled up inside a whale's heart, singing back. We weren't guests, we were bait. Weller began to sob. Ishida started whispering their names. Crawley pulled the emergency ascent. We shot upward, but the sonar kept pinging, chasing. They were following. Something scraped the hull, metal screeched. The emergency lights went red. We made it to 2,000 meters before the pressure equalized again. Only 3 of us were conscious. Ishida was gone. Not dead, just gone. The hatch was sealed. No leaks, but his seat was empty. His gear gone, like he'd never existed. We surfaced with hull fractures and corrupted footage. The support ship staff refused to talk. They pulled us out, burned the data, and quarantined the sub. They called it a systems failure, pressure hallucination. But I remember the song, and it hasn't stopped. Sometimes I hear it through drains, in the shower, in the wind against the windows. Sometimes I wake up soaked in salt water with sand in my sheets. And last night, I found a piece of whalebone under my bed, carved with spirals. If you ever go that deep, listen closely, because they sing to mark you. And once you've heard it, you belong to them. They're not mermaids. They're not sirens. They're nurseries. And the ocean is their cradle. And every whale fall, it's not natural. It's sacrifice. Story 4. I should never have gone back. But some doors, once opened, don't close. My name is Evan Mitchell, and this is my final confession. I've told you about the Erebus, the mermaids, the whispers, but I never told you what we really found at the bottom of the trench. Because the truth is worse than monsters or song. We found another world, another dimension, buried beneath miles of black pressure and dead silence. And something in there is watching. 2 years after the whale fall incident, I was approached by a man who never gave a name. He wore an old Navy coat, spoke in riddles, and showed me a photograph. A sonar image, but not of a creature, of a structure, perfectly geometric, symmetrical, six-sided. It was deep, deeper than any dive in recorded history. He said it had been detected in a pocket of the Kermadec Trench at a depth of 16,472 meters. That's impossible, I told him. That's beyond the known depth of the ocean. He said nothing, just slid me a folder, a mission plan, a paycheck, a waiver that used the phrase dimensional instability. I signed. We called the vessel Eidolon, a new class dive craft designed for singular exploration, 2 passengers only. My companion was Dr. Noor Kashani, a quantum physicist, calm, brilliant, and, I later realized, completely unafraid of dying. As we descended, Noor read constantly from a small black notebook. She claimed it was a copy of something older than modern oceanography, written by monks who believed the ocean floor was where heaven fell. She believed we weren't going deeper in a physical sense, but slipping downward through dimensional pressure. I thought it was madness, until the stars came out. At 15,800 meters, the water outside stopped being dark. It became clear, not in a literal sense, but more like glass. We could see shapes beyond it, shimmering vertical bands like static on an old TV, pulsing patterns in the trench walls that responded to our movements. The trench began to bend. That's the only way I can explain it. Not curve, but bend, like space itself was folding, coiling like the inside of a shell. Then the sonar stopped working. Noor whispered, "We've passed the compression horizon." She turned to me and smiled. "This is the threshold, the gate of pressure. We're not in Earth's gravity anymore." And that's when we saw it. The hexagonal doorway. It sat at the trench's terminus, carved from obsidian stone that shimmered in blues and greens like oil on black water. Floating in the center was a vertical slit, like a pupil, not carved, not mechanical. Just open. No lights reflected from it. No sonar bounced back. It absorbed everything. Noor said it wasn't a structure. It was a dimensional tear. A doorway into a place where the rules weren't written by physics, but by thought. I didn't believe her, until the sub drifted forward on its own. No propulsion, no thrust. We were pulled in. I remember the moment we crossed the threshold. Time broke. I saw my own body from behind. I saw Noor aging in reverse, then splitting into 2 identical versions of herself. One smiling, one weeping. I saw the trench outside fill with buildings, tall, bone-like towers, ships shaped like spirals, whales swimming backward. There were creatures with no faces and too many arms, sitting in circles and humming through slits in their chests. And beyond them, something larger. An eye in the sky, not metaphorical, a real eye, floating above a black sea that bent inward, as if the horizon was being devoured from all directions. I couldn't scream. My mouth didn't exist. Noor turned to me, or something like Noor. It looked like her, but taller, hollow, glowing softly from within. "They built it to contain it," she said. "But it's leaking now. Into our world, into dreams, into pressure." I blacked out. When I awoke, we were back at 9,000 meters. Noor was gone. Her seat was unstrapped, empty. In her place, a black stone sat in her harness, warm, pulsing slightly. I brought it back. I shouldn't have. I know that now. Because ever since we surfaced, I've seen things. Not shadows or ghosts, overlays. I'll look at a building, and for a split second it's a rib cage. I'll hear the voice of my dead mother whispering Noor's words. I can't sleep without dreaming of the trench folding into itself, pulling earth through the pressure gate. I don't know where Noor is. Maybe she is the stone. Maybe she stayed. Or maybe she was never real. All I know is this. The oceans are not just deep. They are wounds. And we just stitched the earth over something that's still alive, still watching. And now that I've seen it, it's seen me. 3 nights ago, I found the black stone on my kitchen table, even though I buried it in the desert. It was warm, and it was singing. Not music, instruction. I understand now. The pressure gate was never a doorway in. It was a way out. And something wants through. If you're listening to this, if you ever hear about an anomaly in the trench, or receive a job offer promising impossible money to go deeper than anyone has before, burn it. Because once you cross that threshold, you don't come back. Not whole. Not alone. Not human. And the pressure? It's not the water crushing you. It's the other side pressing in.